Hello and welcome to our Thursday nights together for The Conversation. It's been fantastic over the last 8 weeks now to talk to those from the arts in so many creative industry fields. And it's, for me, it's that chance to really get into a person's idea of what makes them tick when it comes to what they do. And tonight, the words distinctive, versatile, an international reputation across all creative mediums. He's a musician, he's a composer, he is Nitin Sawhney, and we welcome him to the conversation tonight. Hello.
How are you doing? You all right?
Really good, Nitin. Thanks so much for being with us. I think for a lot of people, I think that word distinctive and versatile probably is what pops into their mind, because you do seem to work in so many different areas, but you seem to master them too. Sometimes people spread themselves into lots of different areas and they don't quite have that ability. For me, I know the word passion comes to mind. You just love what you do, don't you?
Yeah, I mean, I've just kind of always been playing music, so it's just kind of part of my nature. I guess it's kind of the way I prefer to speak, rather than use my voice. I kind of, I guess it kind of feels like a more natural language to me than anything else.
Yeah, the language is an interesting one, because you and I have chatted in the past about how music seems to be able to translate. And I said about an international reputation. That's because you also want to reach out. You want to bring the world in. And I think that's really interesting. And music can do that, can't it?
Yeah, I mean, music, well, this is the thing. I mean, we say music is a universal language because it is. It breaks down all boundaries. It can transcend every barrier because it's the language of emotion. And that's the thing. It's not kind of, I suppose, subject to the same constraints as normal ways of speaking to each other or normal kind of modes of conversation. So I think, I mean, I discovered this once when I went to South Africa, and I went into a little place in Soweto, and I'd been told that it was quite a dangerous place to walk into. So when I went there, it was quite unnerving, because I heard it had a reputation of people walking in and getting shot. But I went in with one friend, and we went through a small kind of village area where people were actually really lovely. And I sat down and I saw one guy just playing a set of congas, and I just kind of sat down and just kind of watched him, and he kind of watched me, and he just kind of handed me a drum, and I just kind of started playing with him. It was just literally just that simple. And then he started smiling a lot, and we were kind of jamming for a while, and then all these people came round and started bringing us food. And I remember one person said, "You play like a local." And that was just brilliant, because suddenly all the barriers had gone down, and it was just really, it was just a really friendly atmosphere, and it was just really nice. And I think that was the moment where I thought, God, it's amazing, isn't it? Just like rhythm, just a connection through rhythm, or through something that, that kind of makes us happy, just breaks down any kind of other barrier of kind of suspicion or fear.
Just out of interest, when you were then with that group, when you left, what was that like? Because when you leave a place like that and you have that amazing, enriching experience, I think sometimes it's really hard to then leave.
Yeah, it's true, actually. Well, they didn't want me to leave, which was really nice, because they literally were treating me like a special guest, and it was just beautiful, And like I remember they were just kind of bringing me all this food, and kids were coming up and kind of, it was just fantastic. But I mean, that's happened in different circumstances as well, connecting with Aboriginal Australians, particularly one guy who's now passed away, a tribal elder in Arnhem Land. But it was amazing, because I connected with him playing the guitar on a sacred land that we kind of both sat on together, and he told me these old stories about the history of his tribe, which was incredible, or of his clan, and I thought that was quite powerful. But yeah, when we were playing the guitar together, we would stop at the same moments just automatically, or we'd have some kind of a weird connection that, again, I don't think you could put that into words. It was just an intuition, and we could kind of feel each other's energy, through the way we play music. I don't think you can really do anything like that outside of music, not in the same way anyway.
Yeah, I think I love that though. I think that ability to communicate in that way and to have an almost understanding about each other because you're hearing those sounds. I mean, you've described to me in the past, I wonder if we could talk about that, about how that central kind of idea of music, where, we're after 11, so you and I can get a bit sort of earthy about this, but, that sound of that first universal sound, I think there is something deeply to be said about that. And I know that I feel it when I go in my car and I turn on the radio or I listen to different genres. There's some things that a piece of music sometimes can completely captivate you on a different level than just hearing it with your ears.
Well, it's very interesting you should say on a different level than just hearing it with your ears, because I've been, last year I wrote an essay for Radio 4 about Beethoven, and in 1816, when he was 46 years old, he had pretty much lost all hearing in his ears, and so he was at that time writing or copying scripture, in Hindu scripture, and he would write down certain words from Hindu scriptures, and it was quite interesting because from then on he wrote his greatest work. And so what was he listening to? And the reason I say Hindu scriptures is because there's a sense of him connecting with something, an inner self, which I think in ancient Hinduism, there's a lot of that idea of kind of connecting with your inner self, and through meditation or yoga or other techniques, and I think that he found some kind of spiritual pathway to hearing music without actually having anything physically, being able to hear it literally. Yeah. So I think there's something in that, that somebody like Beethoven, his sense of musicality actually transcended sound itself, which is quite an incredible thing.
Do you remember the first time, whether it was at a young age, I guess, but the first time where you realized music was something that was more than just listening for you? It was something you had to do.
Yeah, I mean, well, to be honest with you, I mean, I think from the first moment I saw a piano or I played a piano or even just banged on the keys of a piano, I fell in love with that. I fell in love with the idea that I could create sound, in a way that I could kind of control, and I could create frequency that was greater than the restraints or constraints of my voice. So that really excited me, and I mean I was always thinking that way because I guess with I was attracted to drums and other instruments and obviously the guitar, but I think piano was the first time I just thought, wow, there's a very beautiful connection with this massive thing. When you're 4 years old, it looks huge, and yeah. it was just very exciting, hearing all those different possibilities of what you could do. And that was it. I kind of thought of it as a blank canvas. Whenever I touched the keys, it was kind of like I liked the idea of possibility more than I did, in a way, the resolution of sound. So I would look at piano and I would think, wow, I could create anything with that. In the same way as I used to love drawing, I'd look at a piece of paper and think, I can turn that into anything. And I think it's the process and the possibilities that always attracted me.
I was thinking about, over the last year in lockdown, where I've seen you on social media with just a piano, and it's just your fingers on the piano, and you've just expressed yourself on that. And there was something really beautiful about just seeing you just enjoy a piece of music and then share it with us. And you haven't, to put the sort of in the music terms, there's no bells and whistles around it. It's the pure sound. And I'm guessing that sometimes that, I know you'd have to probably do a lot of playing in order to keep what you're doing up and running, but also sometimes you just want to play. You just want to play.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, no, I really enjoy it. I mean, I love just kind of sitting down at a piano and guitar. I mean, I'm very glad that at this point in my life I haven't got to the stage where I feel jaded by music, and I don't think I ever could or ever will. It's just so rewarding to play, and I still will sit and think, okay, today I'm just going to practice loads of scales, or I'm going to practice arpeggios, and I get a lot of joy from that, because actually there's a lot that I've learnt from, and Catherine Ann Davis, the anchoress, she was talking about this the other day when she was talking about EMDR, which is eye movement desensitization reprocessing, where you actually, which is a psychotherapy kind of technique that is used with post-traumatic stress disorder, and also it's used with phobias as well. But the idea of it, it's amazing, because it kind of gets into your brain. It kind of almost recalibrates, or the left and right hemispheres of your brain. So it's kind of bilateral stimulation. Where you have. Originally the idea was to have alternating light, and that could actually sort out problems as you were thinking of them. And I've kind of found that when I'm playing the piano, that when I kind of alternate certain patterns between my left and right hands, and I'm thinking through problems or something that's troubling me, I really find that quite soothing. So it's kind of, so in a way, I kind of find that there's something still really kind of, in the same way that walking can do that, or other things, but I do find it's an extra addition to have this beautiful, these beautiful sounds, and you can create real symmetry and different patterns in the way that you play. And that can be really, really nice. I can really, I really enjoy that still.
So powerful, but also, a great opportunity to just, as you say, get on there and have a performance. It doesn't always have to be a broadcast, doesn't always have to be out there for everyone. It's sometimes just for you, Nitin Sawhney, for you. Welcome along if you've just tuned in. We are talking to musician, producer and composer Nitin Sawhney on our edition of The Conversation this Thursday evening. I just thought it'd be really nice as well to look at just a snapshot, as we do with this new gallery that we've been doing here on The Conversation over recent weeks, looking at some of the work of Nitin Sawhney, and this is a tiny fraction, and we'll just run through some of these moments for a second, and then maybe we'll talk more in depth about how this all comes together. But certainly the film composing, more recently Mowgli, a fantastic project that you were involved with, Midnight's Children, just an incredible piece. And I remember, I think, first coming to know about your work with The Girl from Mogadishu as a film, but then there's also the performance, and we can see right at the top of our screen the Immigrants album, which has just come out, which I thought we could talk about right now. That has been for you just something so important in your life to produce this, the official sequel, as it's described, of Beyond Skin back in 1999, the Mercury Prize nominated. And first of all, take us back to Beyond Skin for a moment, and when that first came into your mind, and then maybe we could then leap forward into 2021.
Yeah, Beyond Skin. Well, So what, when Beyond Skin first came into my mind? So Beyond Skin was kind of wow. I was in a very, very small bedroom at the time. This looks a bit like that now. This is kind of like one of the rooms in my house. But and actually in this place here, I've kind of because of lockdown, I've kind of brought some of my studio equipment here.
Right.
How I'm able to have this conversation with you here. But I. At the time, I had a much smaller bedroom that I was in, and very limited equipment. But I think I was at the point. I'd already made 3 albums. I'd made Spirit Dance, Migration, and Displacing the Priest. And so I kind of really wanted to make an album that was very personal, and so I even included the voices of my mum and dad on there, and I had all kinds of interludes on there, and I was kind of using it to question ideas of identity in respect of race, religion, nationality, and so there's a lot of that on there. So I guess it evolved over the space of about a couple of years. I think I started in about 1996 or 97 and finished it about 98, 99. I think it came out in 99 and then got nominated for the prize in 2000.
I think it's been really interesting, though, to see with the new album that's come out, how many people are referring back to the previous album with such love and joy that they had been part of it. It's almost like you were taking other people on that storytelling you were doing, and I know that is probably what a composer, a songwriter, a musician wants to do, but to really get someone being able to recognize an album for why it's there, I think is really lovely.
It's quite an incredible thing to me, because when you make an album, when I made that album, it was very kind of, like I said, I was in a very tiny room and kind of, with my own thoughts, and in a way I was quite it was quite a self-indulgent experience. So I would obviously, I recorded other people and so on, and sometimes I'd bring them to the house and record them in the living room, like the strings on Homelands were recorded in my house at the time. But I, which was a shared flat, but I kind of, I made it work, and the musicians were fantastic, and it just came together. What was amazing was actually going back to it and then performing it in 2019 at the Royal Albert Hall, and then that was the first time I'd tried to perform it in its entirety, which was an incredible thing to do, because it was trying to get back into my mindset of 20 something years ago, trying to figure out who that person was again, and then to kind of find my way back in so that I could rearrange it to be performed live, and still feel connected to it, and passionate about it enough to perform it to an audience.
So where was Immigrants in the journey of that? Where was Immigrants as a sequel? When did it come in? Where are we talking about here in terms of?
Yeah, I mean, I think because you came down to the studio in Brixton, I played you the first track, which was Down the Road, and I'd kind of put that together. I'd just been playing around with that idea, and that was obviously before lockdown. That was in 2019, but then I didn't really do the bulk of it until after lockdown, and actually I did announce that I was going to be making the album, and I did announce the title. I did say it's going to be called Immigrants, but I had barely any material at all, so it was quite funny. So I've done that before, where I'll come up with a title and think that's what's going to dictate what I'm going to create. And I find that quite an interesting way to work, because the thing with me is I can go lots of different directions. I love music. I mean, I play lots of different styles, and I kind of find myself falling into different styles quite quickly. But if I have a title, it means I'm always thinking thematically, and I'm always thinking about how, even in the lyrics I write, or the lyrics that I work on with other people, and the flavors that I bring in, they all relate in some way to that. And even the people I chose to perform with and collaborate with, all of that was dictated by that one title.
That's amazing, isn't it? And in a way, I mean, I'm a little bit like you in terms of, as you know, I'm not a musician, even though you did allow me to play on some of the instruments in your studio. I often come up with a name of something if I'm making something I do on the radio. I come up with a name of it because I know that there's something amazing about that then I build around it. I think there's sometimes a great joy at finding what the answer is without actually knowing where you're going. What was interesting as well is you mentioned about your studio in Brixton that I came along to, and what's strange now, I don't know if this is for you because you're at home like I'm at home. It's mad to think that in such a short time everything has changed, but the joy of being in the studio space. So it might be a silly question, are you missing it?
Well, no, because I still go into Brixton. I get to go. Yeah, I do go, and I kind of, I'll cycle in, in the mornings, but I kind of, so I love still going, but for a long time I didn't. For something like 8 months or whatever, I didn't go. Yeah. So it was, what I really miss is touring. I really miss kind of going out and doing gigs and kind of playing to large audiences, which I didn't realize how privileged I was until that stopped. It got to the point we played the Royal Albert Hall many times, and we played the Sydney Opera House, and we played the Hollywood Bowl, and played some of the best venues in the world, and they're incredible places that I love. And yet I kind of you get to a point where you're kind of just doing lots of gigs, and you feel. I mean, I never kind of took it for granted, but I think I never really realized how much I would miss it. So I really do miss playing live with and with the band and touring, and and kind of having that camaraderie as well of being on the road, and it's an amazing thing to tour.
Yeah, a lot of artists who would be on that stage right now, who are getting ready to go on or whatever. That not having that there, really strange. So 2021, Immigrants comes out as this new album this week, and people are listening to this. They're maybe linking back to Beyond Skin, but you're giving them something that is a reflection of the world, I guess, in 2021.
Yeah, I mean, it's more. Yeah, it's interesting because I kind of worked with a lot of people who had their own views and their own ways of thinking about that particular subject. And I think, Anna Phoebe, for example, who plays with the band, she's of German heritage, but she's also got connections to Greece and to Ireland and so on through her heritage. But also then you have, if I just went through all the people, on this album, they've all got, interesting kind of backstories in terms of in relation to that word immigration. And so, they tell their family stories. Before I would write with any of them, normally we'd have conversations relating to their experiences or the experiences of their parents or their grandparents, or, how they felt about what was going on with what's happened in the last few years, and so we'd have these conversations, and it was amazing because very naturally and very gradually music would start where conversation ended, and then it was just a kind of transition into creating something that would purely have come out of a conversation, and I thought that was really organic and the right way for it to happen.
But that strikes me about you, that it is about that. It is about, you want to actually know about people. You're interested in the person you're working with. Actually, without that, I'm not sure you would do what you do.
Yeah, not in the same way. Certainly not. I kind of, there are pieces that I write on my own. For example, the track Tokyo is written on my own, or even You Are is written entirely on my own, But then I scored out the parts for Anna to play and for Ashwin Srinivasan to play on the flute, and then on the bansuri, and then Eva, came in and sung it. And that's the thing, they bring it to life. Even if I have an idea, I know that the people that I trust will bring the work that is in my head to life. Even if I haven't collaborated with them. But when I collaborate with them, it's even more kind of exciting, because something emerges that I don't expect. And that's really interesting. And then to try to think, okay, how does that fit in with this idea that I have? And how can I make that kind of work almost cinematically with the narrative? And so I'm constantly kind of thinking almost like sculpting, it's kind of almost like you have lots of songs, but then that's part of it. I'm looking, I'll put them into one big file so I can kind of see them all together, and then I'll kind of switch the order around, and then I'll bring in these interludes, and I'll kind of think, okay, how does that flow? What do I feel when I listen to that, and how does that make my emotions kind of, where do they go? So yeah, it's a really interesting process.
How much of when you're doing, you've got musicians, you're creating these worlds. How much of when you're making the album, when you're making a song, making a piece of music, do you I always feel like I sound like I'm saying sort of ethereal stuff all the time, but you almost don't know how you got there. It just was naturally happening. Going back to our beginning of our conversation, it just felt that that's the place to go. This jigsaw puzzle of music suddenly just created itself in a way. Have you had many of those times where you just go, don't know how I got there, but it has?
Oh, constantly. That happens a lot, and it's interesting seeing that happen with other people I know. For example, I'm godfather to a few kids, actually, to Anushka Shankar's sons, and also and also to the son of Simon McBurney, who's with the theatre company called Complicité, and their company is incredible, but he created a piece that I actually scored the music for called A Disappearing Number, which was about the life of the Indian mathematician Ramanujan. And I remember the first time he put this play on, I mean, we'd been in workshops and we'd been in rehearsals, and I kept looking at him thinking, how's this supposed to work? This is about a mathematician. How are you going to get people to enjoy this as a piece of theatre? I cannot see it. I mean, it's like, it was beyond me what he was doing. And he'd get people to do things, and no one really knew why they were doing certain things. They'd be playing small scenes, but they didn't actually know the full play. No one knew the full play. And then I went to see what he'd done in Plymouth. He invited me down, and he was frantically moving stuff around and playing with things. I thought, Jesus Christ, this is going to be a disaster. I've no idea what he's... And do you know what happened was the most beautiful thing I've ever seen? It was just unbelievable. That guy, I mean, you know, he's done The Encounter, people who've seen The Encounter, which is an incredible play that he did also for radio, online. And he also did it. He performed it all over the place, including at the Barbican. I mean, Complicité is a fantastic company, and it's largely his, he's written most of the stuff. But what was incredible was just seeing how he could take something that was quite difficult and quite inaccessible, which is the idea of mathematics for most people, and turn it into something that was really empathic and really beautiful and really powerful and very emotional to watch. And I was just stunned by that, and everyone in the audience was stunned. I mean, you know, it was just so powerful. And I went up to him afterwards, and I just went, where the hell did that come from? How did you do that? You know, and it's kind of, I think that sometimes, and this is what I've said before, you know, when Michelangelo said that the statues were hidden in the stone, or that, you know, and I think I might have mentioned this to you before, but I mean, you know, that John Coltrane said that improvisation was like a bird that you catch in the air. Yeah. And this idea that, and it's what we're talking about as well, this idea that you know, music or a connection to music, or a connection to something which is artistic, is not necessarily created by us, but discovered by us. And that you know, that there is something that we're connecting to, and we're communing with the universe, and that true creative spontaneity is being in communion with the universe. And I don't mean that necessarily in any theological sense or anything like that, but perhaps in a way where you are kind of, I don't know, just kind of connecting to something that is far more than yourself.
I was talking to a sound artist this week about he's got a project that he's doing, and he was talking about the sound of water coming out of a lock, and that kind of rush of sound. And I said to him, he was playing it to me. He was saying, "What do you think?" You know, he's got this great project coming up, and I said, it's so funny, isn't it? That rush of sound that I've known all my life, you know, living by the sea, but particularly around locks, you know, and being on canals and hearing that shh, and thinking it's white noise. It's the mechanical, scientific music of white noise. And I love the fact that you know, can bring that kind of almost man-made mechanical thing in with a kind of world of the earth, you know, that beauty, that kind of just... and.
Yeah, I mean, what you're saying it also is fascinating, because white noise connects so much to different aspects of our emotional perception. I mean, when I hear white noise, I can hear rain. When I hear white noise, I can hear wind, or I can hear the sound of the ocean, or, you know, all of those things are within white noise. And you know, and so we can hear what we choose to hear within any sound, you know, and that's the other side of how we receive sound, you know. So there's a lot written about that, you know. What sometimes we're only thinking about how we make sound, but the way in which you know, phase locking and so on, in terms of our neurology, that's quite fascinating when you get into how we are actually how we're connecting to sound itself, and how our brains respond. I mean, they've done these studies with chimpanzees talking about and again, I think I might mention this to you before, with oscillatory phase lock, where they talk about chimpanzees you know, responding with displeasure to dissonance in musical intervals, that they get quite panicky and quite upset when they hear music that is kind of that has awkward ratios in terms of the intervals, so and the frequencies. So it's quite interesting because that's kind of a built-in thing, on a primeval level. That's something that is not unique to human beings, is that we actually, the idea of taking pleasure or displeasure from musical intervals is something that is built into our neurology. So the way in which we receive sound, and that's what I mean, when you listen to something like white noise, it's not just the noise itself, it's actually the way in which we receive it, which is also connected to our memories. It's connected to, to the way in which perhaps we have a connection with something that happened a long time ago that we have an association with. And so there are so many things. And of course, music, some music we listen to because we feel nostalgic about it, like weddings or funerals or whatever. There might be an association that we have that is a very powerful emotional experience.
Yeah, as a radio presenter, playing a record and you immediately get a response from someone saying, "Oh, that takes me back to this," and of course it does. It's so there for us. Looking at some of the movie work you've done, I just wanted to touch. We talked about Anna Phoebe, the violinist. You worked with her on Mowgli. I think that was. I seem to recall. Was that called the forest scene? Was that right?
I mean, I brought her in on a couple of different scenes. I can't remember the names of all the cues because there were quite a few.
Yeah, quite a few. Village scene. Sorry, it was the village.
The village scene. Yes, that's right. Yeah, in the village.
This beautiful, just haunting sound that was created with you both.
Well, what I did was I kind of brought. I mean, I'd written the melody and I'd written all the parts, but I kind of brought her in to play it because I love the sound of a violin. But so she played the melody that I'd written, but really beautifully. And I brought in also Ashwin Srinivas, and in the same way I have on You Are, I really like the combination of Bansuri, the Indian classical flute, and the violin. They work so well together, and it's that east-west kind of combination that I find stunning. But also there's a fluidity in the way in which Anna plays that also Ashwin has, but he approaches it from much more of an Indian classical kind of way of playing, and Anna approaches it from a very Western classical way.
Yeah.
But she mixes in other influences as well. So they meet really well in the middle. But yeah, on Mowgli, I mean, she played some. I mean, there was a bit that I remember writing when Mowgli is in the cage. And he's visited by Bagheera and the Black Panther, and it's a very, very moving moment because of Anna's violin sound, but also the sound of the sarangi and the sound, which is an Indian classical instrument, and the bansuri. But I think Anna's sound really kind of gelled all the other sounds beautifully together.
I absolutely loved that movie, and movie work for you. I started at the beginning talking about that you're distinctive and you're versatile, but music, film, video games, dance, theatre, you pretty much covered them all and continue to do so. But what's that experience as a composer for music, for film, actually like? Because going through the different films you've done, they're very different in their text, but in terms of for you pulling out what you want, I mean, I always think emotion immediately is the driving force for me listening to it. And is that your driving force, emotion?
Yeah, you have to emotionally connect with whatever you're working with. So I think that's really important, is that you have that connection, and that's about also connecting to the director. So if you're working with a director, you try to find what their psychological vision is of the film, and you try and find your way into their thoughts and feelings around the characters and around the narrative. So it's kind of a lot less of a it's not, when you're making an album, it's a very different process, because you're trying to find something that comes from inside you, and you might collaborate with other people, but it ultimately comes from feelings that you have, and you're trying to get everything to work with that. But when you're making music for a film, you're really trying to understand the director and and really get into their heads in terms of how they perceive what they've done.
I'm going to take some questions, Nitin, because I know that there have been loads that have been coming through, and I know we'll look at the clock and we'll be like, right, we must get them in. But thank you for all the lovely comments that are coming in as well. We really appreciate it. But if you want to put your message in right now, whatever you're watching us on Facebook, Twitter, or on our YouTube channel as well at Laughing Frog Productions, then please do. But let's start straight away with this question that's come in from Abby. I love being able to connect with people with music and playing piano. What has been the best advice or wisdom that someone has given you within your musical journey, Nitin?
That's interesting. I think many years ago, I remember somebody actually saying to me, it was when I was working, I was improvising, and I remember meeting someone who was a lot older at the time, and I used to play a lot of jazz, and I was always kind of trying to copy all the people that I loved. I loved listening to their work. I mean, Chick Corea or Herbie Hancock or or Bill Evans, with his incredible playing. So I was always trying to kind of find how to play like them. And somebody just said, I can't hear you in that. I don't know. And I think that always stuck with me, is the idea that you've got to find your own voice, and music is an extension of your voice, that it's actually, and that was the most important lesson for me that I think I ever learned is, and so when I'm playing, I think I'm looking for my own flow, and I'm allowing my fingers to find that, and giving them permission to find it, as opposed to dictating or trying to dictate to them what I want them to play. I kind of allow the flow of my hands and the way my hands are to actually tell me what I should be playing, what I should be feeling.
Do you have a particular method that you use, to tap into those kind of ideas?
Yeah, I mean, I will start off by playing through scales, arpeggios, doing all those sorts of things, and doing exercises to loosen my hands up. But then what I'll do is I'll play through some exercises. I might kind of go through various things, but then when I come to play, I let go of everything. I let go of any knowledge I have. I let go of everything. But I just, it might be, for example, if you're playing through a set of chords that you have in a composition, those chords need to feel like second nature to you. So, I'll only feel comfortable when I really know what I'm doing, and I know where I'm coming from. I can then let go, and trust my hands.
One of our previous guests on the conversation, actually, the backing singer and music author Tessa Niles has got a question for you. Tessa herself has worked with everyone in the music business, as we found out on our live stream. With such a vast body of work spanning many art forms, Nitin, is there a project you'd like to tackle that may be out of your comfort zone? Good question.
I'd love to write a full-scale opera. That would be quite an amazing thing, because opera is and when I say opera, I kind of, I'm not talking necessarily in the kind of Puccini kind of Verdi kind of way. I'm saying that it might be taking the form of opera and using that to actually create something. I really find that quite exciting, because I feel like I've done most things that I would have thought many years ago were a big challenge. I mean, for example, writing for silent movies for the London Symphony Orchestra, or a lot of the work that I've done where I kind of thought, oh my God, how am I going to go about doing that at the beginning? But yeah, I think an opera would, a big opera. I mean, I've worked a bit with opera before, but not with a massive scale idea, and then creating something that felt like it was a huge undertaking with lots of, with a big cast and with lots of and a big orchestra. Yeah, I'd love to do that.
And what about, you mentioned there about orchestras. Do you remember the first time when you were in front of an orchestra of players, and how scared were you?
Oh, well, in front of an orchestra, as in conducting. Yeah, I mean, that was, I did a bit in Singapore before I conducted the London Symphony Orchestra. But I think that was probably the scariest, was actually, I mean, the thing was that I mean, if you imagine, I mean, the London Symphony Orchestra is one of the most famous orchestras in the world, and so there I was at the Barbican, and I'd written, the music for a Hitchcock silent movie, which is The Lodger, and I had to, you can't really make a mistake. If you make any mistakes during the course of it, then you go out with the film, you go out of sync with the film. It's very hard to get everyone back in, so that's quite a nightmare. And I had pneumonia when I actually did it. So I was literally standing in front of of one of the greatest orchestras on the planet, conducting them. And I'd had some training with Denise Ham, who's worked a lot with the Royal Academy and so on. But I kind of, it still was a really daunting thing, and it was brilliant because I had such a great response from the orchestra afterwards, and they were really warm about what we did, and I've done and I've done a few with them, but as a pianist, so actually standing in front of them was quite a huge deal.
You love working with fellow musicians, though, don't you? I mean, some people might be quite insular. I don't think you can be doing what you do, can you? Or can you be a bit of both?
What do you mean?
Almost like, I know that I can broadcast, I can be on the radio, I can do this, but it doesn't mean that I'm not also quite focused and inward looking sometimes in my craft. If I'm editing something for the radio, I'd rather do it on my own than collaborate. I just wonder whether that's a kind of bit of a sort of yin and yang for you. Sometimes it's a bit kind of, I am today, but maybe not tomorrow.
Yeah, well, I think when you are in performance mode, you can't have that luxury, as you know. If you're broadcasting, you've got to be switched on and you've got to be there with the right energy. And it's the same if you're performing on the stage. That it doesn't matter what's happened before. You've got to be right there and very present. I remember I used to play with a band called the James Taylor Quartet years ago, and I remember playing in Bristol on a boat called the Thekla, and I had 103 temperature at the time, and I literally I had to play on stage. I literally just took my temperature a few minutes before, and I literally had to get on stage, played on stage, came off the stage, and literally collapsed. I was absolutely dead, afterwards. And it was a similar thing when I did the. I mean, sometimes you can neglect taking care of yourself because you're so immersed in what you're doing. And, that's happened a few times to me. And I try to be a lot more careful now because I think I get so totally focused on what I'm doing that I don't actually care about anything else. And I don't care about my own health sometimes. So, which is probably, and certainly that's not the thing that's a bad idea at the moment, isn't it? So,
well, yeah, absolutely. And I think that's made us all kind of just think, hold on a minute, are you looking after yourself? But something like this week, for example, you're doing so much. We'll come up to a couple of things you're going to be doing over the next few days, but it's really busy because when you launch an album, I always think it's the same when, I interview actors and directors, and they do something that then comes out, sometimes 6-7 years later, or 3 years, 4 years later, yet they've then got to do the circuit of all the conversations about it in order to promote it and making sure it's happening. I'm so grateful to you fitting this in, because it's just a little chat with people watching you and I. No, but that's kind of you. But but it is tiring. It's a constant thing. I'm going to take some more questions because I know that people are going, oh no, where's my question? This is from Gavin Alexander. I know this one because he is a songwriter, and he's got some questions here. He's got a couple of questions. I'm going to do a couple of them. Would you say that creativity is a wonderful, safe way of exploring darker personal themes?
Yeah, I think it is. I think it's definitely, I find it quite therapeutic to explore kind of darker feelings. I mean, obviously with albums that I've made, sometimes I'll get into kind of feelings that I've had that are really negative and try and find ways through them. I mean, some of the lyrics that I've written are coming from quite dark feelings about the world and about myself. Tracks like Dark Day, for example, which was on Dystopian Dream. Dystopian Dream, the whole album was really as a response to, as I've talked to you about again, my dad passing away in 2013. And so definitely it was very cathartic to make that album, but I don't think the album would have, it came from pretty, feelings of extreme grief and melancholy.
Yeah.
So, but I think for me, music is a place of honesty and truth. And so when you are making music, you can't hold back. It's who you are. It's what you're feeling. It's what you're thinking. So, and if it's not that for me, it doesn't resonate with me. I can hear when people aren't being true to themselves when they're singing or playing music.
Yeah, it also has to go somewhere, doesn't it? It has to go somewhere, and presumably with a musician or a songwriter or a composer, it goes there. If you're creating something for a movie and there's a particular scene, I'm sure it must resonate with you about how you're feeling about your own personal situation, about a memory from the past, and that must inform the music score.
Well, for example, if we talk about Mowgli, with or the Namesake, which I did for Mira Nair, both of them they were kind of coming of age films. So Mowgli is in the same way as Gogol is in the Namesake. Those main characters are coming to terms with their own identity, and Mowgli is he's hitting puberty, and but he's caught between two worlds. And it's the same with Gogol in the Namesake. He's caught between two worlds, East and West, and that happens both times. With Mowgli, it's more about the fact that he's trying to come to terms with the animal kingdom and humans, and try to figure out who he is. Who is his real tribe. And so it's kind of, in a way, I guess it's kind of interesting, because when I was younger, there were a lot of issues of identity in terms of my own heritage and my context, trying to understand the journey of my parents as immigrants, and then think about, the fact that I went to a school where there weren't, I didn't meet immigrants. I didn't meet people who looked like me or had the same background as me. So it was kind of a feeling of always being on the outside. And so when I've worked on certain films, I definitely draw on those feelings, because, coming up with Mowgli's theme itself was definitely coming up with the theme that felt like it was the theme of an outsider, a theme of somebody who's trying to find their own sense of self.
And I think when we hear these pieces of music within a film, obviously they deal with the emotion of the time. But when you then listen to that soundtrack, like many of us do, separately, a whole bunch of other things come into our head. And I think that is fascinating about music's other life, particularly movie music. Just back to Gavin with one more point here. Do you think perhaps when writing from inspiration that it's the rebirth of past experiences, which kind of links into what you were saying there, I think?
Yeah, I definitely do think it. I mean, it's kind of, I think it is, but I also think it's sometimes it's not always about past experiences. Sometimes it can just be a feeling, and that might be connected to past experiences, but it might be something that feels fresh and new. I mean, there is hope, there is optimism, and sometimes you can connect to that, which is nothing to do necessarily with past experiences, but to do with a perception of a possible future. So I kind of think it depends. It really depends where you're coming from. When you're writing for films, you have to sometimes hint to what's coming further ahead in the film. And so there's a sense of portent, as to what might happen, in the same way as when you read a Shakespearean play, you will actually see, hints at you'll see portent of what is to come. Yeah. And sometimes you'll do that with a piece of music. You're hinting at something that is going to happen as the composer later, but other people who are coming across it don't know. So, when you're writing that way, but if you're writing songs, I guess it's kind of, it's cathartic first. It's getting feelings out, and a lot of that is about past experience. But it's also about it can be about the present and future. And also, when you collaborate with people, you're working with other people's feelings too. So it's a collective sense of past experience as well, and you're finding meeting places to work in.
Keep your questions coming in. We've got it goes so quick, doesn't it, this hour? But it really does. But keep, which is lovely because it means we're enjoying the conversation. But if you've got any more questions, put them in now, and I will try and get to them before the end of this. But I wanted to ask you about. I said it's been a busy time for you around the album release, but also just loads of stuff all coming in like buses, Nitin, isn't it? They all come at once. Let's take a look at something you're about to do, which we're going to see. This is this Friday, 10 p.m. Later with Jools Holland. Now, tell us about putting this together, and Ayanna Witter-Johnson joining you.
Well, it's fantastic because Ayanna, I've known for a very long time, but she's on the new album Immigrants, and she, I mean, I'd written this piece called Movement originally, which is just a piano piece, and I was kind of, as I was saying earlier, I was thinking a lot about Beethoven last year because it was his 150th anniversary. So I was trying to find a piece of music that kind of drew on from him, but also Chopin, because I've been playing a lot of Chopin recently, and also Rachmaninoff. So I was trying to bring in some of those influences, but at the same time, I also wanted it to feel contemporary and relevant to what's going on, and watching the Black Lives Matter movement and stuff that had been going on. I remember chatting a bit to Ayanna about some of that, and she just came up with the most beautiful lyrics and an incredible song over the top of what I'd written. And it was just stunning. I was like, wow. And Anna did the same thing, by the way. She did it, but more as a classical piece where she played violin. So it was fantastic working with both of them. But yeah, we're going to be playing that live. Originally for the album, we recorded it at Wigmore Hall, which is such a beautiful classical venue. But yeah, that was fantastic. And of course, I've been going to Helicon Mountain, which is Jools's studio. I've been going there quite a bit recently because I've been working with him on his. I'm producing his new album as well, so I've been working with him quite a bit, and there's some fantastic guests that he's got on that album already.
And working on something like Later with Jools Holland, I've enjoyed when it was at the Maidstone studio in Kent, where I'm broadcasting from, and where you grew up in the Medway Towns.
Yes.
I loved going along to the Maidstone studio and watching those shows, and there's something about that collective of musicians that Jools just curates it so well.
Yeah, I mean, he's got a fantastic band. I mean, Jools is a brilliant musician. He's very versatile as well, and this is the thing. I mean, because people know him for his boogie woogie piano, which he loves playing, which is brilliant. But it's just, he's written some pieces on this which are really lovely, really subtle pieces, and really nuanced. And I think he's such a lovely human being as well, and really easy to work with. But he's brought in some brilliant guests on this album. I don't know if I'm allowed to talk about them all right now, but there are but there are some some players that I think are truly amazing. I mean, obviously, just to mention one is David Gilmour, for example, who's obviously I grew up listening to him playing guitar a lot, and I met him a few times, but it was fantastic actually producing a track that he's playing guitar on. But alongside him, I mean, there's some incredible artists. I won't go into all of them now because I think that needs to be a surprise.
Yeah, but it's great. It's great. So just a reminder again that you can catch Nitin on Later with Jools Holland this Friday evening at 10 o'clock. And then at the weekend, it just continues, doesn't it? This is really exciting. So this is part of the Globe, isn't it? And recorded at the Sam Wanamaker Playhouse.
Yeah.
Tell us about this performance and what we're going to expect to see online.
I'm so happy with this performance. I mean, anyone who came to the Royal Albert Hall show, they'll I think they'll really enjoy this. We've brought together. I think Abby Samper is somebody who's new to the band, and she's singing, but she's on the album Immigrants, and people will have heard her singing on Differences and Heat and Dust. But she's an absolutely incredible singer, and she sings beautifully in English as well. So we've got her, we've got Anna Phoebe, and we've also got who's obviously a brilliant violinist playing with us, and then we've got Eva. Who's worked with me for quite a few years now, who sings quite a few tracks on the album, and I love her voice. Her voice is absolutely amazing, and she just captures the emotion, and she nails it every single time. I mean, every single time she performs, she's mind-blowing to me. I don't know where she draws all this from, but it is absolutely spectacular when you hear her sing. And it's such a beautiful setting. And we've got Arif Dervish on tabla, who's been working with me for something like 30 odd years now. So it's a great lineup, and it's in that splendid room. But also Anita Rani, there's an interview afterwards with her, and she's great. So we had a really nice conversation afterwards. So yeah.
It must have been a lovely experience, though, mustn't it? Just performing together. How on it? Did you just all take a moment to just look at each other, going,
Yeah. No, it was really nice. It's really lovely, and that's the thing, because, like I said, I mean, it's so difficult if you're a musician who's used to bouncing ideas and feelings and kind of and sounds off someone else. If that's taken away from you, it's like losing a limb. So when you're working with musicians that you absolutely have massive respect for, and whose work you really think is pretty amazing, like Anna or Abby or Eva and Arif as well. It's just fantastic being on stage with all of them.
So taking place across the weekend.
Yeah.
And if you'd like to find out more details on that, go to momenthouse.com/Nitin Sawhney. That's momenthouse.com/Nitin Sawhney. Our time is almost up. It's been an absolute joy having you on with us. Thank you so much. And you complete our 8th episode and our first season of these conversations. And I really appreciate you being with us. I wanted to ask you, all the things we've discussed tonight, and we've only really touched the surface of the work you've done. I mean, I even heard your music today on a TV commercial for a very famous company that may or may not be a fruit. And there's something wonderful about the life of music, actually, Nitin, isn't it? That you create it. It comes from your mind. It comes from your feelings and your thoughts, and then it becomes out there into the world. Knowing that you've got all these bits of music that you've created, all these places that's there, that must also feel a bit of a responsibility that this music is out there. And I just wonder how you just kind of, do you put it in a compartment? Do you put it on a shelf? Where does it go?
Yeah, I mean, I do feel that there's a responsibility about that, because I kind of feel quite strongly that that you're curating your work the whole time. You always want to make sure it's taken care of in the right way, and that's something I do feel strongly about. But I'm really happy. The thing you talked about, I thought was quite fun, so I was really happy with how they used it.
Really good to have you with us. Thank you so much for being here. And beyond all of this, can you give us a little insight into what might be coming up next for you? Because you talked about doing your ongoing producing work, we didn't get a lot into tonight, but what's coming up?
Well, I mean, we are playing. I mean, this is the thing, because at the moment we're booked to play the Cheltenham Jazz Festival and also a few other things. But now I don't know what's going to happen. But we've got in October the 29th, we are booked to play the Royal Albert Hall again. But also on top of that, we've got. I'm curating a whole week there, which is called Journeys, and I'm going to be bringing in other musicians during the course of that, including Ava Waves and including Manu Delago, and also Shimmick Dutta, who are going to be performing in the Elgar Room. And then the following year, I mean, next year we're touring, and we're going to be playing the Roundhouse in Camden and just touring up and down the country. So I'm looking forward to that as well.
Yeah, getting back on the road again.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, God, I missed that.
Nitin, take care. Thank you so much.
Yeah, cheers, mate. Thanks a lot.
Oh, wow. Nitin Sawhney. Really great to have him on with us on the conversation. And thank you so much for being part of our show over the last 8 weeks. Just a reminder that you can subscribe to the conversation by going to Laughing Frog Productions on YouTube, and you can catch up with all those conversations we've had over the last 8 editions. I've really enjoyed these conversations. I hope you have too. And if you've got any ideas of, thinking, God, it'd be really nice to hear from someone from a certain field, then please do get in contact with us. Here is the email, which is laughingfrogproductions@gmail.com. Nitin Sawhney was our guest tonight on the conversation. We will be back soon, taking a break. That was season 1. We will come back and do more. But from me, for now, to you, thank you so much for watching. And good morning to you because it's now Friday morning. Thank you for staying up late. It's been great. We've really enjoyed it. Take care and speak very soon. All the best.